Next, we're going to talk about X and Y intercepts. The y-intercept is where the line intersects the y-axis. To find the y-intercept, you let x equal 0 and you solve for y. The x-intercept is where the line intersects the x-axis. To find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0 and you solve for x. You will hear me say these things about how to find the x-intercept and how to find the y-intercept lots and lots of times because I will remind you of this a lot. Finding the x and y-intercept is a great way for us to graph a linear equation, especially if the equation is in standard form. So for this method of graphing, you probably would want the equation in standard form. So let's look at an example and I'll show you what I mean. So here we're going to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept of the graph of negative 2x plus y minus 4 equals 0, and then we're going to graph the equation. Now the first thing I'm going to do is move the 4 to the other side, the constant. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get negative 2x plus y equals 4. Now I want to find the x and y-intercept. So how do I find, let's do the y-intercept first. How do I find the y-intercept? You let x equal 0 and you solve for y. Now when it's in this format, when you let x equal 0, 0 times negative 2 is 0. So one good way to do this is we'll just cover up that term. Well, I guess you can see through it, but you get the idea. So if we cover up this term, and then we end up with y equals 4, and that's the y-intercept. So we have the y-intercept is the point 0, 4, because we let x equal 0, and when we solved for y, we got 4. Now we want to find the x-intercept. So we're going to let y equal 0, and we'll solve for x. So when we let y equal 0, we get negative 2x equals 4, and if you divide by negative 2, which really you could do in your head, you get x equals negative 2. So the x-intercept is negative 2, 0. We let y equal 0, and we solved for x and got negative 2. So now I have the y-intercept, which goes on the y-axis, and the x-intercept, which goes on the x-axis. So 0, 4, don't forget to scale your graph, so I'm going to count by ones. 0, 4 on the y-axis, negative 2, 0 on the x-axis, and that's all we need to draw our line. Because when we have 2 points, we can draw a line between them. Oh, we'll get this here. And there's a graph of my line. So the equation negative 2x plus y minus 4 equals 0 produces this graph. A line, thus it's a linear equation using the x and y intercepts. Okay, let's try this one. So we have y equals 2/3 x plus 4, and we want to find the x and y intercept. Now we could actually find the y-intercept very easily from this. We're going to let x equal 0. So when I let x equal 0, this whole thing will go away because 0 times 2/3 is 0. So I get y equals 4. So actually it's very easy to find that. So since we already know it, the y-intercept is 0, 4. To find the x-intercept, I'm going to let x equal 0 and, I'm going to let y equal 0 and solve for x. Now that's a little more difficult, so I'll go ahead and do it algebraically, but then I'm going to show you why I think putting it in standard form makes it so easy. If I let y equal 0 and solve for x, because that's how we find the x-intercept. So I'm going to solve this equation, so I subtract 4 on each side. And I could do fraction busters, or I can think of this as I want to undo multiplying by 2/3. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3/2, which means I have to also multiply this side by 3/2. So we can do a little canceling here, and we get -6. Over here, the 2's cancel, the 3's cancel, which is why I chose to multiply by the reciprocal, and we get x equals -6. So we have -6, 0 for the x-intercept. We have 0, 4 for the y-intercept. So I can go ahead and plot those. Don't forget to always scale your graph. So -6, 0 on the x-axis, 0, 4 on the y-axis, and then we can draw that line. And here's my graph. Okay, doing the same problem, but let me just show you why I like to put them in standard form if I'm finding the x and y intercepts. So if you start with fraction busters, here was my equation. I'm going to multiply the whole thing by 3. So we get 3y equals, 3 goes into 3 once, times 2, so we get 2x. 3 times 4 is 12. Now I'm going to go ahead and move the 2x over here, so we have -2x plus 3y equals 12. Now I know to be in standard form, I really would multiply by a -1 so that this would be a 2x, a positive. That doesn't really matter since my task right now is to find the x and y intercept. This is going to work because now I can do it in my head. If I let x equal 0 and solve for y, then let me make this not show up. Okay, so if we let x equal 0 and solve for y, I can do this in my head and I see y equals 4. So I get 0, 4. Then if I let y equal 0 and I solve for x, I get x equals, I can do this in my head, -6. So I get the point -6, 0. And this is my x and y intercept. So when you have it in standard form, you can do this little cover-up method that works really nice to find the x and y intercepts. But to use this method, you really want to put it in standard form, or at least, I guess technically it's not in standard form, but you want to have it lined up like this, and then it will make it very easy to find the x and y intercept. So remember, to find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0 and you solve for x. To find the y-intercept, you let x equal 0 and you solve for y.